Today marks 7 years since the Khayelitsha Commission of Inquiry released its report. That inquiry was convened to find solutions to the poor state of policing in Khayelitsha and surrounding areas. According to the Social Justice Coalition, not much has improved in the 7 years as the area continues to record some of the highest murder and sexual crime rates in the country. Let's get you the latest on the story now. Our next guest is Head of Research and Policy at the Social Justice Coalition. It is Khensani Motileni. She joins us now via our video link in Cape Town. Khensani, a very good morning to you once again. Thanks so much for your time. I mean, it's difficult to know where to begin on a story like this. At the time, the Khayelitsha inquiry was one that was desperately needed to try and address some of the shortfalls, specifically in terms of policing. Shall we begin there? How many active and permanent police stations do we have in that area?
Good morning, Michelle, and good morning to your viewers. So I think in 2021, we find ourselves with the same police stations that were there during the time of the commission. So during the time of the commission, there were 2 police stations in Khayelitsha, one in Site B and one in Harare. The commission did make recommendations. It was recommendation 19 that a new police station had to be built in Makaza. So this recommendation was made in 2014. It's 2021, and the site where the police station is marked to be is still empty. But in 2019, the SJC built a wall of hope for residents of Makaza, just also for them to have hope that one day, someday they'll be seen and a police station will be built on their behalf. So that's where we find ourselves today. And I mean, SAPS has not even taken liberty to mark that land themselves. So considering the rate at which land is occupied in Khayelitsha, the SJC felt that it was also important just to also protect that space and just like leave it for what it's actually meant for, so that communities also know that this site is for the police station that was promised. So I think that's something that's also very important. So we've built a wall of hope in Makaza.
I mean, 20 recommendations in all. Shall we take a step back and perhaps go back to what led to the inquiry and the need for the inquiry at the time?
So what had led to the inquiry was literally decades of struggles with crime and violence in Khayelitsha. That was simply it. Also considering the relationship between residents of Khayelitsha and SAPS members. So it was literally just all these cases. I don't know if you know about the 8 original complaints where women were killed. I mean, other people were killed because they choose to be different, you know, and be themselves. So you have hate crimes, for example, women that were killed because they were lesbian. Someone was killed because she was openly HIV positive as well. So those are the kind of complaints that were received, those that were filed with the Premier ahead of the commission. So it was just literally over a decade of struggles with crime and violence in the informal settlement. And
to date, Khayelitsha still experiences some of the highest murder and sexual violence crimes in the country. In terms of the response from the province, from police, as to why this police station has not been built all these years later, 7 years later, what is the official response?
So the official response earlier in the year, we were told that Makaza has now, so like it keeps shifting through the years. Yeah. So Makaza police station was priority number 6. At some point we were priority number 3, and then now we're seemingly back on priority number 3. And we were told that they will start the tender process and the design process in August 2022. But I mean, even when you drive to site today where the police station is actually marked to be, there is nothing. There's no sign that something is coming, except for the wall that the Social Justice Coalition built.
Human resource allocations was also one of the recommendations of the Khayelitsha inquiry. Just the number of police officers, the issue of visible policing in particular areas. How do we score on that point?
Still nothing. There's definitely still nothing. I mean, just to take it up and just to push for the matter. So the Social Justice Coalition, together with Equal Education and the Women's Legal Center, litigated in the Western Cape Equality Court, specifically on Recommendation 7, which obviously had to do with the development of guidelines for visible policing in informal settlements, as well as addressing the allocation of police resources in poor Black communities. The Equality Court actually found in our favor, and they then said that poverty would be pronounced as a ground for discrimination, and that the current system that SAPS used to allocate resources actually discriminates against Black and poor communities. However, Part A of that matter has been finalized, and now we're currently at loggerheads with Part B. We've since then approached the Constitutional Court earlier this year because Part B is not getting finalized, and I think, the moment Part B gets finalized, then we can then push for the implementation of it. So we've currently approached the Constitutional Court, and as per their style, the Minister of Police is opposing the application. So we're currently waiting for directives from the Constitutional Court on how to proceed and get this matter finalized.
So hold on, let me get this straight, Khensani. So the Minister is opposing the application. I take it that takes some money in the form of legal fees. So we have money for legal fees. We don't have money to implement the recommendations of the inquiry.
Yeah, I think you just put it well. There is no money, but there's definitely money for them to oppose. Because, I mean, why couldn't they then abide by whatever relief we were seeking in the Constitutional Court, but instead they're then opposing the application in order to get the Equality Court matter finalized as a whole, Part B of the relief. So which has to do with getting guidelines and with regards to policing, visible policing in informal settlements.
So it would be easier for the sake of our discussion then to talk about how many of those 20 recommendations have actually been implemented.
So, they did appoint like the Western Cape, ombuds, crime ombuds. Yeah. But I mean, how does that translate into substantive equality for people living on the ground, right? People living in informal settlements, whenever we're doing our research and whenever we do advocacy and consultations with them, we are told they don't even know about this. So it's just a tick box exercise that we actually have this commissioner, this ombuds, I beg your pardon, but it hasn't really translated into anything. People don't know who they are. People don't know where to go. They don't even know how to report because it's recommendation 19. It was put in place in order to ensure that the relationship between community members and SAPS actually is mended, but none of that has been done. The other one also is the CCTV cameras, for example. Between 2014 and 2019, between 2014 and 2019, we've went from 14 CCTV cameras to 24 CCTV cameras, and we then had 8 additional which were installed, but these were installed without any consultation from SAPS, and these additional cameras were installed because of the previous campaign for alcohol harms reduction crime game changer campaign. So this actually had nothing to do with the commission, but had everything to do with alcohol control and not crime prevention in Khayelitsha. And I mean, the commission made it quite clear that CCTV cameras had to be installed in positions where like in the transport hub, and these high crime areas. But none of that is being done. And I think if I may add, if you look at the street lighting in Khayelitsha, you'd see there are these high mast lights, right? So the problem with high mast lights is that if a perpetrator comes from behind, the victim of the crime would probably struggle to identify them on camera because the high mass light creates a shadow. So then you then get these cases that get thrown out of court because the victim is unable to actually identify who the perpetrator was. Sure. So we are then advocating for shorter public lighting, which is then kept at a shorter distance compared to the high mass lighting because they're not effective and they don't translate into any impact and convictions.
Yeah. It does. One gets the feeling that these measures are being put in place in a completely different world to the one in which the people of Khayelitsha live. I want to, Khensani, also talk about the relationship between the community and between police. That was a big theme in the Khayelitsha inquiry. I mean, one of the staggering incidences that's noted here in some of the research I have in front of me. In one instance, a woman approached the police to report a rape and was raped by a police officer.
Yes. So that those are the stories that we've captured on camera from women as well, and they've also been reported in the Parliamentary Police Portfolio Committee as well in May this year. That also we have issues with the community police forums as well because they're not being as effective because some of them usually request bribes in order for them to assist community members. So now we are then experiencing a problem with and complaints with CPFs who are actually supposed to be working with people on the ground. So I think that's the problem, and I mean, as a black woman, if you go and report a crime in a different police station, you are then told that, no, you're actually supposed to go to this police station. We're also seeing a shortage in FCS units as well. So as a black woman, I would not feel safe in going, or as a child, I wouldn't take my child to go and lay any complaint because then they'll be further victimized. We have stories of women telling us that they're scared to speak out because there's a high chance that their partners or perpetrators have a relationship with police officers and that their case might not lead anywhere. So those are the kind of relationships that we're currently seeing in Khayelitsha. I mean, obviously the understaffing of staff, the lack of training and how they need to receive, especially victims or survivors of domestic violence and sexual violence. It's just non-existent. So instead, women and also men in communities are telling us that when they see a police van, they get scared because they're scared that they'll be victimized and they're scared that they'll be harassed. So us seeing police visibility or law enforcement visibility in the informal settlements has nothing to do with our safety at this point, but it has everything to do with us fearing for our lives.
Yeah, one broken promise after another. Khensani, in terms of what the Khayelitsha inquiry meant at the time, no doubt it was seen as a turning point in addressing a whole range of issues that really were plaguing that particular area in Cape Town. How do we move the dial forward insofar as holding government to account? I mean, you talk about the Constitutional Court dealing with one particular issue insofar as the recommendations are concerned, but how do we hold government to account and effect real change in the living conditions of the people in that area?
Michelle, it's very difficult. That's a very difficult question to answer because also as an organization, we're finding ourselves at a place where we have to actually reflect and re-strategize to say, are our advocacy methods, are our research methods actually being effective, and do they actually measure or show impact or substantive equality on the ground? And they actually don't. But I think the beauty in the Equality Court case is that if we can solve recommendation 7, then all the other recommendations will be then catered for because it's the specific recommendation that actually holds all the other issues together. So if we can actually solve the human resource allocation of it, so then that will also then effect change in the training, in the staffing of people, into visible policing. And I mean, as civil society, we are willing to sit with the national and provincial government to actually put our heads together to say that how do we then put together guidelines on effective policing in informal settlements? Because you cannot say that you will police people in informal settlements the way you're policing people in affluent areas, such as your Sea Point and Camps Bay. Issues and dynamics are very, very different. You might get a murder or 2 murders reported in a day in Khayelitsha, but in Sea Point you probably get a murder reported every 6 months at most. So it's very important in as much as we're trying to hold government accountable for their constitutional obligation and ensuring that everybody is safe, but we as civil society are saying, we are here, we've got the research, use us as well, invite us to the table. Yeah. I mean, we are making submissions to Parliament for law reform purposes. We are trying to do our best on the ground, educating people on the ground on their rights and what's actually expected of them and how they can actually protect themselves. We are doing campaigns on people, how they can actually protect themselves from being violated from the police, because now things are actually at that point. But I mean, I would really like to call out the national and provincial government government to say that as civil society, we are willing to sit around the table. We are willing to present you guys our research. If they don't have research capacity, we have this research. We work in these communities, and we have one common goal, and that common goal is that we want to live in safe and in a society that is free from violence and hate.
Yeah, absolutely. Khensani Motileni, thanks very much for your time this morning. She's an attorney and activist with the Social Justice Coalition. In fact, that coalition is hosting a panel discussion today, the commemoration event going live at 11 o'clock on both their Facebook and YouTube pages. You can take part in that if you are able to do so. 7 years since the Khayelitsha inquiry, very little done since then.